Times like this one, the legislation is vulnerable, to say the least. And here to help break it all down, Romina Boccia of the Heritage Foundation and Austin Goolsbee, former chair of the Council on Economic Advisors for President Barack Obama. Thank you guys all for being here. All right, let's start with what Mick Mulvaney, Romina, said this morning on with Jake Tapper. He was asked why the Senate bill makes the corporate tax cuts permanent, but the individual tax cuts lets them expire. Take a look.
All of these intricacies about this expires after 5 years. Maybe this is permanent. Maybe this is not. Maybe the estate tax is doubled for another couple of years and then goes away. Is to try and shoehorn the bill into the rules of the Senate because of the absurd rules in the Senate that requires 60 votes on just about everything. In order to get the 50-vote treatment we get under reconciliation, we have to follow these very specific requirements of the Budget Act of 1974. It doesn't speak to the quality of the policy. It's simply trying to essentially manipulate the numbers and game the system so that you can fall into this, square peg.
By using gimmicks.
And with Andrew Mitchell on Meet the Press just now, he used that same language, that it's a gimmick. Is that a positive argument for a tax bill to say, don't worry, this is all just a gimmick, admitting that it's just a gimmick?
There are important components of this tax plan, and in order to make it work, the Senate will have to abide by the rules, the Byrd rule in particular, which doesn't allow for a deficit impact. But it's also politically smart because this isn't the kind of comprehensive tax reform conservatives have been looking for. It moves in the right direction. Setting up these expiration deadlines allows lawmakers another bite at that apple down the road.
But, you know, Austin, for the average taxpayer, first of all, who hears the budget director say that he's using gimmicks, but then also hears, oh, my tax cuts are temporary, but corporate tax cuts are permanent. Why couldn't they do the gimmick the other way around? Wouldn't that be the argument that Democrats will make?
Well, yes, but it's worse than you just described because the actual official scoring came out on this tax bill, and it shows that virtually every person that earns less than $75,000 a year is actually going to have their taxes go up by the end of this tax bill. So I don't think the Republicans are going to be able to explain this away. The only reason that the wrath of God opposition has not descended on this tax bill is because it's not yet come up for passage. If the Republicans think, or if the president thinks that he's going to get some easy victory here, I think all you have to do is look at what's in this bill, that it's going to massively raise taxes on students, on schools, on teachers, on people who are have large medical expenses, on homeowners, to recognize that nothing like this is going to pass through the Senate or is going to pass, even if it gets through the Senate or the House.
And I mean, and that is the question, Romina, because you have a tax bill that the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities put out this chart, which I have near me, which you can look at here. We'll also put it on the screen, that shows the change in after-tax income for all the various income brackets. And if you look all the way on the end, the people above $1 million get the benefits. It's going up for them, so they're getting more after-tax income. The people all the way down at the bottom, between $10,000 and $20,000 a year, lose the most. They're being hurt the most. You're eliminating things like the child medical expense deduction. How do you explain to the average American why the richest people above $1 million should have more after-tax income? Put that chart back up again if we could. Why should the richest people get more after-tax income as a result of this so-called tax cut, and the poorest people between $10,000 and $20,000 have less?
This is a highly misleading chart because it assumes that all of the tax changes that are set to expire will actually be allowed to expire. I don't think that's going to happen. Most likely, lawmakers will reverse those well before they will expire. The other aspect of this likely assumes that the individual mandate repeal that's part of the Affordable Care Act will raise taxes, which is a complete bogus assumption.
It'll cost 13 million people their health care.
This is, no, only if they choose not to buy overpriced Obamacare health.
Once their premiums are unaffordable, 13 million people will be able to afford health care because of the regulations
in that law. But
no, because of this law.
They will be better able to afford health care because they'll have higher wages.
Lower income.
They will have higher income.
Lower income. Look at the chart.
The math.
Look, let's go back to Austin Goolsbee. You're the economist here. I'll let you argue this point. If people have 1.5% less income, how will they have more income to buy health care once the individual mandate is repealed?
Okay, there's two things going on there. The first is there are people, when the individual mandate goes away, the point is it raises the prices of everyone else. If you're buying health care on the exchanges and a whole bunch of people drop out of the market, the prices go up. That's why they want to do this. They're actively trying to destroy the working Obamacare exchanges. So it's not just that some people will choose not to get health insurance. That's going to raise the prices for everyone else. And the second thing is, you heard right there, you heard Mulvaney himself when he described it as a gimmick, and they say, oh, they don't want to abide by the absurd rules in the Senate. The absurd rules are the rules that require you to pay for your tax cuts. So if you look at the rules in this bill, if they pass this bill, there will be a direct and immediate cut to Medicare because it has to be paid for. These aren't absurd rules. What's happening is they're trying to count on gimmickry and smoke and mirrors to get things through that they know if you put them on the table, no one would support. So what they want to say is, well, let us take large tax cuts and let us assume that in the future somebody will get rid of the tax increases and thereby sneak a camel underneath the
right. I mean, you're basically counting on future Congresses to not
do
allow
what you passed,
these to expire,
exactly.
right? But how do you explain, I mean, to the average person, when you say we're going to do a permanent corporate tax cut, but because of pay-for rules, because we have to pay for it, we're going to cut Medicare, we're going to cut Medicaid, and we're going to have to trigger sequestration cuts that Mick Mulvaney, who is called Social Security Disability Income Welfare. So you're saying you're going to cut the nursing home money for people who use SSDI to pay for corporate tax cuts? How do you how is that even justifiable?
Yeah. So the reason to make the corporate tax cut permanent is because it's the most pro-growth policy. That is what will drive up workers' wages.
When in history have lowering to corporate tax cuts ever produced more job growth and more wage growth?
There are many examples.
When?
Canada is a recent one. Germany is a recent one. They raised other taxes so they could lower their corporate rate in order to drive up wages for workers.
Is that true, Austin? Do you
Real wage income has gone up in Germany as a result.
I've been on record, and the Obama administration was on record, of let's try to find ways to reduce the corporate rate paid for by getting rid of deductions within the corporate system. What does not make sense is let's pay for a big cut in corporate taxes and abolish the estate tax for billionaires and a bunch of other high-income directed things, and let's pay for it by taxing the middle class. That doesn't make sense, and that's what this bill does now. So that's why it's not going to proceed.
Let me play that on that point about the estate tax, because only about 11,300 families in a country of 326 million people pay the estate tax because they have estates worth more than $5 million. Eliminating that would create enormous wealth for that 11,300 families, including the Trumps. But this is what Donald Trump had to say about the bill.
Tax reform will protect low-income and middle-income households, not the wealthy and well-connected. They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing, and it's not good for me, believe me.
That's what he tells his supporters, and they, of course, believe anything he says.
Look,
but NBC News did an analysis that Trump and his own family could save more than $1 billion under this bill. How can that be justified for an ordinary American that could lose their SSDI?
The death tax is one of the most anti-growth, the estate tax, death tax, whatever you want to call it, is one of the most anti-growth policies. And the numbers you have completely ignored countless families who plan their estates around this tax. When
only
that goes
11,300
all those efficiencies will go away. But those are family-owned businesses that have to sell assets in order to pay a tax bill because somebody in their family died.
The Trumps,
it's
the Adelsons, the Kochs. Are we saying that we need to protect the Koch family from the estate
the wealthy
tax?
are going to pay higher taxes when this plan goes into effect. The wealthy are paying higher taxes. There will be more Americans that will not pay any federal income tax at all.
I have the chart here. Put it up one more time before we go. That is not what any of the analyses say, and the CBO has been quite clear on it, that the people with the least money are going to pay more in order to give the very rich a tax cut. I don't know how we justify that.
No, the distribution is actually in the other direction.
It's not according to that.
Virtually all middle-class individuals are seeing a tax cut, 10% in the very first
actually
years.
Not backed up by the facts. I appreciate you being here.
Wealthier individuals will pay more.
Well, that's a talking point, but it isn't backed up by any of the facts and any of the analysis.
Underlying bill,
unless the CBO is just inventing things. That is not what. Romina Boccia, we'll have to have you back.
Thank you.
Austin Goolsbee, we'll have you back. Thank you both. We'll debate it all again.